Alrighty, folks, Q&A 97 today. Let's do it. Is volume resensitization something desired coming out of a D volume, or is it theory nerd stuff? So I personally just haven't seen in my own experience, and I just don't believe that response to volume changes all that much. I don't think that you can go from needing 2 sets to progress at the beginning of a block to needing 5 sets to progress. I do believe you can go from needing 2 sets to get sore to needing 5 sets to get sore, but getting sore isn't progress. So in my opinion, it's just a side effect and not something desired. How do you think your powerlifting to win programs hold up today? Well, they worked then and they work now, but just like everything that I wrote or talked about in that area, and just like pretty much everything that every natty powerlifter talked about or wrote in that area, there's too much of a focus on hyper specificity and not enough of a focus on long-term development via generalized hypertrophy. You need to focus so much on building muscle as a novice and an intermediate. How do I determine maximum effective volume? AKA, what is the optimal amount of volume for me and how do I figure that out? Really, man, this is actually a FOMO question disguised as a volume question. What this question is really asking is, how can I be sure that I'm doing enough and I'm not missing out on enhanced gains? And you can never be fully sure because optimal volume is a moving target. Stop asking yourself that question and just ask, am I making good progress? If the answer is yes, don't change. So here's how I handle this personally, man. I don't even try to determine what the optimal volume is. I just focus on progression. So let's say I start with a super minimal amount, like 1 set. I'll keep running 1 set until progress stalls. If I'm not regressing and I'm just stalled, I can generally be sure I'm not doing too much and I need a little bit more. And I'll continue that process until I get to the point where adding that next set causes regression, and now I know I've done too much. So let's say I'm talking about my Smith behind the neck press, right? And I've worked up from 1 set to 2 sets. And I'm stalled out. I'm not regressing, but I'm stalled. I go to add a 3rd set. And now when I go to train the Smith behind the neck press again in 48 hours, I've actively regressed. I've lost like 2 reps. Well, now I know for sure that I'm doing too much volume. So I have a couple choices. I can either rotate to a movement that requires less volume, or I can change my split to allow for more recovery between when I do that movement. And it just depends on how important the movement is to you and what's best overall for your current physique needs. But that's basically how I handle this. I focus on progression and I don't worry about, in theory land, what's the optimal amount of volume to do. Would having a free weight base allow you to make a longer run on machines? Well, the answer is yes, but this is also true in reverse as well. Anytime that you have a higher general strength or general hypertrophy base, you have a higher possible peak even on new movements. So if I took a novice and I made them do nothing but machines for a full year, and then I put them on starting strength or strong lifts 5x5, they would go much further than a typical real novice because they would have a base of hypertrophy and strength that would carry over to the free weights in the long run. So yes, this is true, but not because anything about free weights is magical. Does jogging for 30 to 40 minutes on an off day completely negate the recovery potential for hypertrophy? So let me get this straight. What you're asking me is, if you go on a 30-minute run, is that going to cancel out all of the recovery that you would have otherwise gotten from taking a rest day off from the gym? No. Let's all remember, everyone, let's all remember that the vast majority of competitive pro bodybuilders historically do anywhere from 4 to 5 to 6 cardio sessions per week. All of them. Every week, even in the off season. Now, there is going to be a recovery cost associated with any sort of cardio, especially jogging, but not enough to cancel a full rest day, man. Would it ever be a good idea to deload / peak different movements at different times? I mean, the only time that you're going to be quote unquote peaking a movement is if you compete in it. I have one client right now, for example, that has 5 different movements that they care about their 1 rep max in: squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead press and chin up. If they were going to do a powerlifting meet, we would peak the squat, bench, and deadlift and not the chin up and the overhead press. If they were going to do a chin up and dip contest like street lifting, we would peak the chin up and not the overhead press or the squat, bench, and deadlift. So that's the main reason. Did you always love training, or is it something that you grew to love over time? I've literally always loved training, and that's even before I lifted weights. I've loved sports, I've loved physical training, I've loved training for things that aren't physical my entire life. My entire life. Before I even have memories. I used to apparently watch like the Rocky movies and copy the scenes that he would do in the training montages with the sit-ups and the shadow boxing and push-ups. I would try to copy him and be just like him. This was never ever something that I did because I felt like I needed to be healthy to be a good person. It's never ever something that I did because I felt like I needed to do it to impress girls. It's never helped me in that department ever anyway. So no, I did not grow to love training over time. It's something that I loved right away, and I knew I'd be doing it for a long time the first time I tried it. You gave a novice linear progression for bodybuilding a few Q&As ago. I mean, that's pretty generous. I listed some exercises. Was that meant to be done ABA, ABAB, or every other day? So whenever I list a full body split like that for novices, and I will eventually write the full body ebook program that explains all of this, it's meant to be every other day. You don't want to train bench and then on the next day train press, for example. What is the difference between a sled leg press and a pivot leg press? So it's really all in the names, man. A machine that has a pivot point is going to be similar to basically like all the hammer strength machines or the machine that you see me using in this very video. That means as the weight moves, it will change its distance from the pivot point, meaning it doesn't have an even strength curve. And most pivot point leg presses, just like most hammer strength equipment, have an ascending strength profile, meaning that it gets further away from the pivot point as the range of motion goes on, which means that it is harder towards lockout and easier at the beginning. A sled leg press is going to have the same resistance throughout the whole range of motion. So it's going to have an even resistance curve that feels the same at the bottom, in the middle, and at lockout. How do you stop your adductors from rubbing together and causing chafing? This is actually relatively easy to solve. Just get underwear with long legs, get boxer briefs with long legs. Get the ones that go pretty much down to your knees, and that way you have some coverage under your shorts or your pants to prevent any skin-on-skin contact, because it's really the skin-on-skin contact that causes the chafing. It's not going to be just like, if there's support there, you're not going to get any chafing. So long-legged underwear is the key here. Forward-leaning dips have more shoulder extension, are easier to progressively overload, and they hit the front delts better than overhead press variants. They also hit the chest better than bench for some people. Why aren't dips the main compound? And again, man, this is where I just have to fully disagree with you, because I don't think your opinion is based on real life experience, and I think you're basing this entirely off of theory, and especially basing it off of the theory that dips are going to be a great front and delt exercise because they fully stretch them and take them through a full range of motion. To me, this is the exact same discussion that we just had yesterday with regards to squats versus hip thrusts. Squats take the glutes through a full range of motion and fully stretch them. And when you test squats in novices, they're an amazing glute exercise because of stretch-mediated hypertrophy. However, in advanced athletes, we know that squats do not reliably grow the glutes because squats are often limited by the quads and the adductors. Very few people, due to the principle of neuromechanical matching and their own individual leverages, are going to have a dip that is limited by the front delts. Almost everybody's dips are limited by their triceps and or their chest, and that is why they are universally known as a tricep and chest exercise. Last but certainly not least, dips become a logistical nightmare for people that are super strong. When you get to the point where you're hanging 4, 5, 6 plates and above between your legs, you're either going to need specialized equipment like a loading pin to stack the plates on, or you're going to need super thin like competition kilo plates, or there won't be enough room between your legs for the plates. Second, you have to actually have a standalone dip station or really, really sturdy bars, because otherwise it shakes like crazy and with the exercise. You need like steps in order to help you get up to the handles. I'm just telling you, at extreme levels of strength, it's a lot of trouble to set up dips properly. In a previous Q&A, you said you were going to slow down the rate of progression on the hammer pull down to something less than 1% per session. When is it acceptable to progress by less than 1% per session? When you're me. Because here's the thing, I'm doing a full body split where I train the same movement 7 times every 2 weeks. That means, roughly speaking, if I was to add 1% every session, that's the same as adding 7.5% every 2 weeks, which is the same thing as adding 3 reps to a movement every 2 weeks. And I'm not some typical beginner progressing from a 135 squat for 5 to a 135 squat for 8. I'm doing hammer pull downs with 190, 200 pounds. So because of how high my frequency is, the 1% rule doesn't really work. Is it correct to assume that most selectorized machines have an even resistance curve? No, that's not correct. Sure, the resistance that the machine is providing is even, but the strength curve is going to be determined by the interaction between the human and the machine. So for example, take a leg press. The machine itself has an even resistance curve, but if you're putting your feet low on the platform, the distance between the knee and the line of force provided by the weight sled is going to be greatest at the very bottom, making it lengthened bias, even though the machine is providing even resistance. Yes, I love this picture so much I'm using it twice. So what? Sue me. Or, more realistically, leave a nasty comment in the comment section. Anyway, guys, that is the end of today's Q&A. So, as always, my friends, if you would like to work with me directly, or you'd like to check out any of my ebooks, or you'd like to become a supporter on Patreon, you can find links to do all of those things in the description box on YouTube. If you like the Q&As, remember to like these videos. It helps in the algorithm, I swear. I'm not just saying it because you're trained to say it and all the YouTube stuff. It really does. And with that said, I will be back on Saturday for another training session and another Q&A. So I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy.